So we have defined the three types of investment in the country. That is the real, which we have said this is as a result of the kind of a purchase shown by the capital goods by the people of the nation, where they'll actually consider to do business with these goods. Autonomous, we have said this one is done by the government in the country and does not relate to the level of the income at all. But maybe we can add here and say it depends on the government's policies. Like, what do we want to see happening this fiscal year? What are our plans? For example, this will drive us into, let's say, thinking of, we can now upgrade our hospitals, we can do ABCD. And again, the level of the technology in the country would also be a determinant element as to why the government would consider a given kind of an investment or a project, let's say, to take place in the country. So if asked, let's say, to relate the level of the income to this kind of investment we are talking of, how would you represent this? Illustration. Investment now is depending on the level of the income, and we are talking of autonomous investment. Autonomous investment done by the government. If related to the level of the income here as our independent variable on the x-axis, then you'd actually see is this the plan by the government that this year we are going to do ABCD, and it's not going to change with a change in the level of the income. The only determinants will be the technological level, and again, our policies as the government in the country. So you'll find that the investment curve, the investment curve here would actually be a horizontal straight line parallel to the levels of the income in the country. If it comes to induced investment, we have said this is done by the people of the country, the people we call investors, those who are in the business. If you are to rate again the income here, you can as well call it capital Y in short, to this investment, then you realize that at zero level of the income, there'll be no investment because it has to depend on the level of the income. And as the income increases, so will be the investment in the country. So the curve representing the investment will actually be a rising curve as to the increase in the level of the income. But all this, the conclusion we can make is that the higher the level of the income in the country, the more will be the investment. But now we do this as it relates to the way the income is being earned and that investment under the concept of what we call the multiplier concept and maybe the accelerator. But before then, we can note that the relationship between the investment and the nation is that the more there is investment in a country, the more the job opportunities or employment opportunities, and hence more income. You see, income later on determines the investment. Like here we are saying the investment will depend on the level of the income. It is going to talk about the induced investment. That income will talk about the induced investment. But again, the more we have invested, the more we are likely to generate income. Through us doing business, we have sold the goods. So through the production method, we are able to measure the level of the income in the country. Through us being employed, the production has given us a chance to be employed. Through now the income method, we can note that the national income would also be measurable. And the more the income we earn, the more the consumption. So you see this, all this that we have been talking of would actually be related. Then after we are now aware of the investment, we can now introduce the concept of the multiplier and also the accelerator principle. So let's go to that. Before that, let me respond to this. Somebody is asking, is there a relationship between the inflation and investment? Yes. And I want to think of somebody who is doing business. There's somebody here who is doing business. Why do we get into business as entrepreneurs or as business people? It's because there's a motivation. I am thinking of earning a profit, for example. I am thinking of getting a benefit from that production. And when you are thinking of investing and the drive is about the price, then it means there'll be more production. But production cannot happen without you investing in the capital goods. So we can note that the higher the prices will be noted in the nation, the more a business person will be motivated. But let's see what really happens. Higher price calls for higher supplier, for more supply of the commodity in the market. That we know from the supply analysis. But you cannot supply if there's no production. So supply heavily depends on the production. It's out of what we're able to produce that we can be able now to supply in the market for sale. And when this production is increasing, it means more will be supplied, and then you take advantage of that high price in the market. So higher price is a drive for somebody to produce more. This is what we are calling the effect of inflation. But for you to produce, you require the factors of production. One of the factor inputs we talked about is capital. Capital does not mean money. Capital means what money can do for you. Capital means the money you have has helped you to acquire the capital goods, meaning investment. And when it comes to the relationship now between investment and the inflation, is that it is actually a positive. But the catch comes in, if this inflation is, I've given you a whole outline on what inflation is all about, and it should be investment. And we have talked about, again, the types of inflation. Read through that paper on inflation. And you realize that there are different types of inflation, and all of them, they have different magnitudes of effects on the nation. So when inflation is, for example, moderate, a rate that is in between around 4 to 9% there, when it is moderate. When it is creeping, 2 to 3% there. those ones are helpful to a nation. They do attract investment. They do attract businesses because people are still able to afford the commodities in the society. But when the inflation rate becomes hyper, when the inflation rate is rapid, this deters investment in the country. Why? People cannot afford the goods and services. And when there is no consumption, it means you'll be producing, but there's no one who is actually purchasing. So you are actually demotivated to produce further. So the relationship between inflation and investment in a nation depends on the type of inflation you're talking of. If people can still be able to afford the goods and services when these prices are increasing, yes, to you as a supplier, you'll be motivated to produce more. And when we are producing more, we need to purchase the capital goods, which means investment taking place in the country. However, if the inflation rate is too high, a case where people are not able to purchase the goods and services, it means the consumption will be threatened. And that gives a signal to the supplier now is likely to reduce the level of production. And when people are running away from productions, then it means investment levels are going down in that particular country. So it depends on the kind of inflation we are talking of in that particular country. If it's too high, investment will be threatened. If it is such a level where people are still able to afford the goods and services, then we cannot. There is an attraction to invest more in the country. And I'm hoping that your question is well taken care of. So let's now introduce this concept we are calling the multiplier. And multiplier and accelerator are actually related. What is multiplier? Multiplier is a ratio which actually relates the change in what we call the income as a result of the change in autonomous investment. Multiplier, usually denoted by letter K in most of the books, is a ratio that relates the change in the income due to a change in the autonomous investment. Autonomous investment, we have said this is done by the government in the country. So when the government invests, like when the government constructs maybe a highway, what's the relevance of such in a society? More business, which means more income will be generated. Transportation becomes easy from one point to another. How do we compute the value we are calling the multiplier? The multiplier is given by change in the income due to a change in autonomous investment. And we can note this, that this will be computed as follows. K, the multiplier, is given by, I'm going to use the notations, change in the income all over the change in autonomous investment. So allow me to distinguish between the induced and autonomous with a small letter a here for the autonomous investment. Change in the income is given by what? A point to note. And NB, you can note this. The change in income is given by change in autonomous investment divided by 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume. And if you remember, we said if I take 1 and I minus the marginal propensity to consume, then I'm going to determine the marginal propensity to save. The MPC, we noted, if added to the MPS, the result is actually 1. So if you know one, you can always determine the other. So on the denominator here, here, you can still get the MPS as your notation to go by. Okay? Thus, we can note this in a shorter way. I want to bring the change in Y in my K as to how it is determined. Our multiplier K can be given by multiplier K is equals to the change in the income, which you are noting as change in autonomous investment, divided by 1 minus marginal propensity to consume, or rather you can have it as your denominator here, the marginal propensity to save, yeah? And then we are dividing this one by the denominator here, the change in autonomous investment. We are dividing by the change in autonomous investment. So K can actually be computed in a shorter way as follows. Change in autonomous investment divided by 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume. And I've said you can as well have on the denominator the MPS. Then the reciprocal of this, as usual, we have done this one so many times. 1 divided by the change in autonomous investment. And you can see change in autonomous investment will cancel with the other change in autonomous investment. And now, in short, K is given by 1 all over 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume. Or you can note it as, if asked to compute the K, you can as well get it as K is equals to the multiplier 1 all over 1 our denominator here, marginal propensity to save. One may be asked, what's the relationship between this K and the marginal propensity to consume? What kind of a relationship you're going to draw? Remember, MPC and the MPS, at no point should they go beyond 1. They should always be reading 0 point, yeah? 0 point, 0 point. Not unless one is 0 that the other one can now take a whole 1. So if we have to relate our marginal propensity to consume to the K, the conclusion will be, let's assume here we have a value like 0.9. 1 minus 0.9, what will that give us? 0.1. 1 all over 0.1 will be a larger value here. If we put a marginal propensity to consume of, let's say, 0.2, our denominator will be how? 1 minus 0.2 will give us 0.8. And 1 all over 0.8 would tend to give us a smaller value. So the kind of a relationship we can draw between the K, the multiplier, and the The marginal propensity to consume, and this is also another common question, is that the higher the marginal propensity to consume, the higher the MPS, the higher the multiplier K. They are written in that form. And we can also note and vice versa. But we said we only apply vice versa if we know what it's meaning. In this case, the lower the MPC, the lower would be the multiplier K. So if there's more consumption or there's a drive to consume in the nation, the more there'll be what we are calling the multiplier in the country. Let's look at the accelerator principle, the element we are calling accelerator. The accelerator principle. Accelerator now looks at what? It looks at the effect of the multiplier. When we have the income changing, look at this. We are saying that the income has changed as a result of what the government has invested in the country. When that income changes, it induces people to further invest. And therefore, accelerator principle, usually denoted by most of the books, they go for a Greek letter beta. Beta is the notation for the accelerator principle. Beta is given by, but you can always replace this one with another letter, it's okay. The change in induced investment. And we noted that induced investment is that which is coming in the name of increase in the income. I'll go for small letter I there up to denote the induced. Change in induced investment due to the change in the income. When income changes, it induces further investment in the country. That further investment, which is coming in the name of the increase in the income or the change in the income, that is what we were calling the induced investment. So how does the investment done by the people of the nation changes in the name of the change in the income? Income would change because of what the government will have done, the investment taken by the government. When that income changes, it induces the people of the nation to further invest. When I start a kiosk today and I, for example, generate a profit of, let's say, 2 shillings, then I go tomorrow, I have 5 shillings. Then I go another day, I have 10 shillings. For sure, there's a motivating element. And the 5 shillings that I'm getting will not be consumed all of it. Much of it I'll also consider to plow back to the business for the growth. So income generating actually gives us an overview on, do I further invest or not? The more the income generated, the more the people of the nation will be induced to invest. When we relate now, the way the induced investment done by the people of the nation is changing as a result of the change in the income, this is what we call the accelerator principle. And you can see there's a heavy relationship that you're able to draw between the multiplier and the accelerator, in that the higher the value of the multiplier effect, the K, the higher the process of acceleration. That when this income changes, it is inducing further investment in the country. The value of our accelerator principle here would actually be high. So let's make that conclusion, and we say let's note something here, and we can note this: the higher let me note it this way, the larger the income changes, the more the induced investment. Okay. Also, the more or the higher now, the higher the multiplier effect. The higher the multiplier effect, the higher the accelerator principle. Okay, so that's a conclusion we can draw between those two items. Okay, lastly, I would want to talk about, within the few remaining minutes,